Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Hang on one second, and I'm going to get Ron Marz in here. There he is.
Hey,
Good to
John.
see you, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, other than some technical difficulties, we're doing just fine. So I'm so sorry. I do have the Almost American cover as far as the lobby card for this episode, but I don't trust my graphics right now, so I'm not going to be able to show the cover while we're talking. But this is an Aftershock miniseries that wrapped up, and the trade came out in June. Am I right, Ron?
I think first week of July.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't. No,
that sounds right.
But I think first week of July.
Okay, and normally I'm not a big true crime fan, but I am a big true espionage fan. And this is a really neat, sad story that's based on reality. Give us the 10-cent tour on Almost American.
Well, it's maybe not even based on reality. It is reality. 97.8% of what's in the miniseries is the honest to God truth as it was told to me. So certain names were changed to protect the maybe not so innocent, but it's the story of a Russian husband and wife who were intelligence operatives for the Russian government, who eventually had to flee the country and wound up initially in the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
Looking to relocate, hopefully to another place, and ended up walking into the American embassy and got lured into the clutches of the CIA and eventually the FBI. Both of which agencies kind of wanted to run them as their property, if you will. So they got caught up in the bureaucratic red tape of the U.S. government while they were trying to make their lives over here in the U.S. So it's a real life espionage story, and there is espionage and background into what Russian intelligence operatives actually did. But it's also, I think, a very human story of two people trying to make their way in the world when their country has very much turned their backs on them, and they are in a situation where they don't know who to trust.
How did you come across this story?
Aftershock came to me.
Oh,
Aftershock came to me and said, "Hey, here's a thing. We're talking to this couple, and we think maybe you're the guy to bring this to comic form." Which initially I was like, well, why me? And in thinking about it, well, my first real job as an adult, or actually not even as an adult, as a teenager, was as a journalist. I was a journalist at a daily newspaper while I was still in college. So sort of collecting facts and arranging them in an order to tell a story is not foreign to me. It's what I was taught in high school and in college, and what I did for the first few years of my career. So this was essentially the same kind of thing. It was just translating it into comics.
Understood. And honestly, man, this is why I love this current era of comics, where a straight up espionage drama can be the backdrop of a story, and it doesn't have to be capes, and it doesn't have to be a ton of fistfights and things like that. I mean, it's intriguing.
It's ultimately not a terribly action driven story, which was a hurdle to overcome in how we told the story. But it was hopefully it's visual enough and it's intriguing enough that people respond to it as a comic. Obviously, we're in an era in which finally we can tell any story we want as a comic. So this is an espionage story that fits into the comic space, certainly, but it's not a James Bond sort of espionage story. The artists who joined me on this, Marco Castillo and Benny Lobel, just did an amazing job of translating that world, translating the real world into the visual of the story. It was not an easy gig, certainly. A lot of real world places, a lot of likenesses for our main stars. For Jan and Victoria, and a fair number of talkie scenes where we had to come up with some ways to keep the camera moving and keep the visuals exciting, even though the drama was in the dialogue.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Looks great. I have to say, it really does look great. And also, again, I think this is great. Did you see this as a good challenge in terms of, again, those kind of hurdles that people maybe expect from comic book storytelling, as far as, again, that kind of, expectation of more action?
I was able to take all of this material that I was given, all of the research, various and sundry articles that were in magazines, newspapers, a sort of series Bible that had been prepared as almost like a book pitch, and then just lots of conversations with Jan.
Wow!
Just him telling me stories. Like there's a sequence in which they have to pretend they don't know how to drive in Portland, Oregon, where they were residing. And Victoria gets very frustrated with it because obviously they know how to drive. They've been, they were taught how to drive by Russian intelligence services.
Sure.
So that particular opening to issue 4, where they get in the car with a driving instructor, and she's just had enough and floors it and goes screaming around the hills in Portland, Oregon, is real. That actually happened. And as soon as he told me, I think I remember I was driving in the car and we were having a chat about just stuff that happened. And I was immediately like, that's the opening to issue 4. That's what I'm going to use. So it was a challenge, but it was also kind of, it was putting a puzzle together. You had all these pieces. Sure. You had to figure out what way they best fit together, and also how those pieces fit together to make a story, because it's not a clean and concise story where there's a big shootout at the end or anything.
Right.
So it's a real life story, and then it doesn't really have an ending. So we had to figure out, okay, well, how do we give this a sense of conclusion, so that it's satisfying for the reader, but it's also real. It's also
right. True to the facts.
What's going on? Yeah.
No, I get it, man. That's really cool. How long ago did the real story happen?
Early 2000s is when it started.
Wow. Okay. Post 9/11?
Yes. I think maybe 2004 is when they first walked into the embassy in the Dominican Republic.
Sure.
But the dates are in the book. I just don't remember them.
I'm hip. It's cool. And also, God, I remember back in the 80s, one of my favorite movies that showed the complications of defection, and also, well, actually, not really the defection, but just the complications of secrets. The Falcon and the Snowman, the great Timothy Hutton, Sean Penn movie. And also, it's really amazing that this happened in the early 2000s. One of the, if you will, failures of 9/11 certainly was the various branches of the intelligence community failing to talk to each other, and you get that kind of frustrating bureaucracy in Almost American.
Yeah, certainly there's, I didn't want to portray anybody as the good guy or the bad guy in that sense. I think there were enough on both sides, but like anything else, it becomes very territorial. It becomes less about the well-being of the people that you're dealing with, and more about the well-being of my agency, my office. How do I get a gold star out of this deal? And so obviously in that sense, entirely true to life. Entirely.
Wow. How many conversations with Jan? I mean, that's amazing that you get to meet with him face to face.
Oh, we've never met face to face actually, but plenty of phone conversations and Zoom conversations, And we're still in touch, and we're still friends, and we're going to be doing more projects together down the road.
Oh my God, I'm sure he's got a million stories. Good Lord.
Yeah, well, he's got a million stories and a million connections, and we're actually part of a joint venture called Real Spy Comics, which is Jan and a number of other sort of ex-spooks, if you will, partnering with the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
To try to carve out a niche in the marketplace for real spy stories, the stories as told by the people that experience them. Espionage stuff, but also sort of black ops and those kind of stories that are maybe previously classified but can now actually be told. So that's an ongoing process of putting that together. And we're also working on a separate story called Valhalla right now.
Okay. Is that going to be self-published, or are you going to go through an established publisher with these stories, or is that still being figured out?
We'll make that decision down the road. We're working on the series now. We're getting the issues done. So the whole thing, all 5 issues will be done. Jason Masters, who is a buddy from South Africa, actually, who drew the first James Bond miniseries for Dynamite, is drawing it. So it's got a pedigree. It's pretty good.
That's great, man. I love Dead Reckoning is a great new publisher that is specializing in military comics, and they're reprinting a lot of Garth Ennis's stuff. And
I'm actually doing a project for Dead Reckoning. So
hey, that's awesome.
You're preaching to the choir here. They do really nice
stuff. That's great, man. Oh, that's great. I tabled next to them at Baltimore Comic-Con last fall and got to know them even better. They've been great. They reached out to me not only for Garth reprinting of old Garth projects, but also Lawrence Luckinbill, the actor, Cybok from Star Trek V, wrote. He and a writer adapted his one-man play of Teddy Roosevelt about not only about Teddy's career, but also it had a World War I angle because his son was a flyer in the early years of World War I and sadly died on the battlefield. And it's a great story. But yeah, I'm a big Dead Reckoning fan. That's awesome that you're working with them, man. That's cool. And I know too, both from a self-creator or self-publishing standpoint, and also some of these other publishers like Aftershock for Almost American. I'm glad you're finding these opportunities with these other publishers that frankly are offering great alternative programming to the usual fare from DC and Marvel.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide range of stuff out there, and I'm thankfully in a position where I can kind of pick and choose my projects, and so the ones that sound intriguing, like, hey, here's these actual Russian spies. Do you want to work with them on a story? Or in the case of the Dead Reckoning project, which is called Blue Angel. That's by Rick Leonardi and myself.
Cool.
And we'll be out. That's an OGN of 132 pages, I believe, which is done. The art is done. I'm just tweaking the dialogue. That'll be out in February of 23. And that's, sort of 1 foot in real life military hardware, Gulf War kind of stuff, and 1 foot in what if somebody on an aircraft carrier had gravity powers and was, involved in a lot of historical stuff, but from the point of view of somebody who's got a little extra juice. So yeah, I'm having a ball doing, I've always been the guy who wants to do a bunch of different projects. I don't want to just write superheroes. I don't want to just write horror. I want to be able to sample all the plates on the smorgasbord, and thankfully the business of comics itself has evolved to the point where you can really do that. You don't have. I mean, certainly when I started in this business, your choices for doing comics were usually superheroes or superheroes, which is not a bad thing. And I, obviously am very thankful for the start of my career and being able to play with all those toys and some of the best stuff going. But, more choices is better for everybody.
I completely agree. And again, I think the various things you've done, your work in the Top Cow universe, your work at DC, But as you say, it's really the last 20 years has just been amazing as far as the opening up of other genres and new publishers that are, kind of want to offer an alternative programming. I think it's terrific, and also I think all of it. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know other readers that are my age and whatever and slightly younger that still love superhero stories. But one other things, I was just talking to Dan Panosian yesterday about his new book with Scott Snyder, Canary, and great horror western and melding of two genres, horror and western. So
Yeah,
I think it's a good time.
The opportunities to do a bunch of different stuff have just exploded because, I'm not naive. Like, publishers have found that there's an audience for that stuff.
Yeah.
Little by little, it's kind of chicken and egg. The publishers put out a little something, and there's an audience, and then they put out a little something more, and it's a boulder rolling downhill, and it gathers momentum. So when something comes out that's not a bunch of characters in tights beating the hell out of each other, which has been very good to me over the years. That's not a complaint, just an
100%, man. I'm going to talk to you about the transition from Hal Jordan to Kyle Rayner in a little bit, if you don't mind.
That's odd. No one's ever asked me about that.
I understand. Well, I'm sure we've discussed it before, but I do want to, just kind of get a fresh take and also just where things are.
And I think and in point of fact, I mean, the kind of superhero stories we can tell now is a much wider range of stuff as well. So, certainly when I broke in, it was kind of meat and potato superheroes because that's what the market was.
Sure.
But little by little, it's grown, and we're telling a lot of different creators are telling a lot of different stories for a lot of different readers, and I think that's all good. It's not an accident that we sold in dollar value. We sold more comics last year than ever before.
Isn't that amazing? Yes, and maybe not, because the great thing about comics is when we were all in lockdown, all right, we're sitting at home. Why don't we read something?
Yeah.
And also, I think all of us nerds, I don't know about you, beyond reading more comics and settling in, one of my nerd passions that I totally leaned into, I was an old Corgi car collector when I was a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they're really expensive. But what I did do instead was I found a lot of Hot Wheels size die-cast cars that I don't go for the rare stuff. I don't need the rare stuff. I don't want the rare stuff. I want the stuff that I connect to from the franchises that they built stuff on. So not only Hot Wheels, but also a great company called Johnny Lightning. Got a lot of different licenses. And I got the Blues Brothers car, and I got Sheriff Justice's Smoky car, and the Trans Am that the Bandit drove. So I was just getting the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo. And then we're all reasonably priced. I guess like 15 years ago, there was a really big push for Hot Wheels size collectible cars. And now they're dirt cheap. And truly, I mean, mostly within the range of literally $8 to $15. I found a lot of great cars. So that's what I leaned into. What did you lean into?
There's various and sundry cars back there that were either driven by James Bond or Batman. So
sure. I got all the Hot Wheel Batmobiles, and I got a standard. I did buy one Corgi. And that's the GoldenEye Aston Martin, because it was like $50. It's like $50, and I'm like, all right,
actual golden. Yeah, I've got one of those around here somewhere.
But I did get both the standard Hot Wheels Aston Martin, and also I got the No Time to Die one that has bullet holes in it, which is fantastic.
Oh man, what a couple of nerds we are here talking about Matchbox cars.
Oh God, you'll appreciate this. I found, and again, it was under $10 from 78 or 79, and I'm assuming it was a tie into the Superman movie. It's a red Daily Planet Matchbox car.
Oh, I remember that.
And it was the truck. And on the side of the truck, like you see on buses or certain trucks as you're driving and stuff, there was an ad for the Daily Planet. But weirdly, there's a shot of Superman still with the Clark Kent glasses and, like doing the opening the shirt thing.
Because that's a good front page photo.
Well, yeah, and the headline is Superman Saves the Universe. I'm like, you're burying the lead. I got to disagree with the way you set up that headline, Perry. What the hell's going on, man? But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's great. And I'm Word Balloon is my business now. This is my workplace. If I had a desk as I did in my radio years, I would probably bring a couple of these things in and just adorn them on my desk and stuff like that. And I've got a desk, but mostly, I'm working right now from a small table where I normally put the laptop down and the camera, and I do conversations like the one we're doing. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't regret making those buys, but that was what I was buying during the pandemic. Did you have any like specific nerd things that you were going after during the pandemic?
Not really. I mean, just
because you're an adult.
Yeah. Look behind me, John. I'm obviously an adult.
I'm hip, man. No, it's good. Absolutely, man. I know what I'm talking to. It's cool.
And you also get to a point of, man, where am I going to put all this shit?
Too much stuff. I'm hip.
Too much stuff. So I think really things need to go in the other direction. We need to get rid of some of this stuff.
I understand. Well, that's another reason why the Hot Wheels, man. They're tiny, so it's okay. I mean,
all is good.
Yeah.
All is good.
So and they have heft to them. They're die-cast metal. They're not plastic. I bought a Mach 5. I bought a Racer X car as well. So I got my Speed Racer fix. All retro.
That's good stuff, man. I have to confess, one of my weaknesses is all the various and sundry Batmobiles. So I'll buy those in whatever different sizes they come in, from Matchbox to the ones that you can put a 6-inch figure in.
No, I got and I remember a couple of years ago when it was featured at San Diego, one that's about small shoebox size, like women's shoes small. But it's like, about 12 inches or whatever. I don't know what the dimensions are, but it's a 66 Batmobile. And it even had a couple 3-inch figures that came along with it and stuff. So that's one that I got. My buddy loves those cars in that size. Again, too big for me.
It's the greatest car ever, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So beyond the George Barris 66 Batmobile, which is your favorite of the successive Batmobiles?
Got a soft spot for the animated series, the initial animated series one.
Yes,
that's pretty great. But the 89 Tim Burton one,
yeah,
probably number 2 on the list, because it's just, I can remember being in the theater when that thing lit up and just thinking, man, that might not be the 66 Batmobile, but it's pretty damn close.
Well, and I like the one that almost had ribs on the outside. I believe it was the
Joel Schumacher for the fourth one.
Right. The Val Kilmer one, actually.
Oh yeah.
So fourth is Clooney.
I actually got to sit in one of those in Mexico City at a convention down there, and sat in it, like not in the convention center, but sat in it when some dude in the street just drove up in one.
Wow!
Like that whole lit from inside with the ribs and everything. I was walking on the street with Andy Lanning. We were headed to dinner, and this guy in a Batman suit just pulls up to the curb, and we're like, the hell? It's like at night in the middle of Mexico City. Brightly lit Batmobile pulls up, and the guy's like, get in. So obviously he did.
Did he know who you guys were? Was he a fan?
I think he had a sense, but maybe not specific. I mean, I think you were walking back from the convention center, so I think he had a sense, but we were two of us nerds in a Batmobile with literally Batman behind us with his cape spread out. Pretty good deal.
That's awesome, man. Your audio got a little shaky, but we can get the gist of it, and we're doing fine. And I would say 90% of this is okay. Ed Cato has a comment, and he's happy to see you, man. Absolutely, Ron Marz is the best. I quite agree, Ed. Ed's a good man, no question. First of all, as you're talking about seeing a Batmobile in person like that, I forget what year of San Diego, maybe 2009, 10, something like that. Definitely after at least the first Chris Nolan movie with the Tumbler. They were all in front of that area between the San Diego Convention Center and the Hilton.
The Bayfront, yeah.
Yes.
I was there, and I hung out for a while, late at night.
Yes.
After trolling the Hilton Bayfront bar.
Sure.
And just nobody around. It was other than the security guards, and just went and hung out and talked to the guards about the vehicles and stuff. It was really cool. I mean, they said, look, we can't let you any closer than these velvet ropes, but if you come back tomorrow, we can get you inside one of these.
Wow.
Which I didn't have time to do, but still, just to, it was just very cool to be amongst all of them. It was for a Batmobile nerd, it was a pretty cool night.
I did the same thing, and it was during the Eisners, so it's a little bit earlier. And ironically, just a handful of people, and it was still during, I think, public viewing. And Kevin Smith just walked up and started taking pictures. So he and I were talking about it and stuff, and just like, isn't this fantastic? And again, close enough to our age where it's like, no, he gets it.
Yeah, we're all cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely, man. No, that's great. Back to Almost American. And mentioning the Spy Museum, I'm always interested when there are other genres and there are entry points to those genres beyond the comic book store. Did you do any promotion yourself or arrange for any sort of spy fans that don't necessarily walk into comic shops to make them aware of what you're doing with Almost American?
Well, I think there was some outreach by Aftershock, and also obviously Jan has a relationship with the Spy Museum. He's done some programs there, and I think he just did his first live appearance there.
Great
pandemic. So it's an ongoing relationship, and certainly having this kind of book in the museum gift shop.
That's what I was wondering. Okay,
you're preaching to the converted in some ways.
Yes.
So hopefully hopefully this is the kind of thing that gets people who aren't reading comics to cross the bridge and try it out. Hopefully it's a fairly it's a fairly easy read in terms of if somebody's not familiar with comics, some people go, which box do I read next? And well, I don't actually call them boxes, but okay. So hopefully it's fairly straightforward in presentation, so that it's amenable to people who are maybe not the average Wednesday warriors.
Right. No, I think that's great. I remember almost 20 years ago, early aughts, he wasn't at the show, but I was talking to other guys that knew him through First Comics and other collaborations over the years. Tim Truman had a Western comic, couldn't get anyone to bite on it, so he self-published and really promoted it in a mail order sense through Western magazines, cowboy magazines, and did great. And that's cool. And I don't know specific numbers, but again, talking to Mike Grell and Mike Gold and people like that, it's like, Tim did good. And that's a conversation I still need to have with Truman to find out how it went. Yeah,
I think again to that whole thing of comics are expanding in genres that well, in case of a Western, Westerns were huge in the 50s,
sure.
But and even into the 60s and 70s. I mean, some of the first comics I read as a tiny tot in the 70s were, Rawhide Kid reprints.
Sure.
With Gil Kane covers. But Western comics have been out of favor for a long time, but now we're even starting to stretch into that. I think the expansion of comic culture into the mainstream also allows people who are maybe not comic fans to go, oh, well, I go see Avengers movies when they're in the theater. Maybe I should, if I'm a Western fan, I can try a Western comic. And, it's little by little, our little nerd culture is subsuming every other one out there.
I agree. And honestly, I'm so glad that crime comics are reaching mystery and crime fans. And I know Brubaker and Rucka and the like are doing what they can to get that more awareness. And Hard Case, one of those great pulp crime paperback companies, is now, messing around in comics as well, and has a deal with Titan. And That's another conversation I need to have, man. I'd say this. I'm going through my laundry list as we're talking about this stuff, right?
Everybody wants a little of what we got. Everybody wants some of the stuff that was, our secret sauce for, 30 years ago.
And not to besmirch the previous decades, but really, I think the art has elevated. One of my great joys was my old college roommate and his wife taking them when we were waiting for our dinner reservation across the street to a comic store. And my buddy knew what was going on, but his partner was just like, wow, these are comics? Because she was used to Sunday Funnies and High and Lois and, Peanuts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But she was just blown away by the sophistication of a lot of current books.
Yeah, certainly if you don't know and you don't have opportunity to walk into a comic shop, you're not going to know.
Yes.
And I think that, sort of the wall of comic titles that you see in Barnes & Noble can be intimidating for the first timers. You don't even know where to look, but you walk into a comic shop and there's a lot more, front-facing books and somebody to help you.
Sure.
I think it's an easier sell than just kind of stumbling into a big box store and saying, well, where do I start?
Where do I start? Absolutely, man. And also, I hope that some of the independent bookshops start putting the graphic novels alongside the prose novels. And it's like, no, this is the crime section. Yes, there are obviously traditional crime novels, but you might be interested in some of these graphic novels. Sean Phillips might excite you. To name an obvious, or Michael Lark, or some of these other guys.
Like anything else, as long as it sells, they're going to put it out on the rack.
Yep. No, I agree with that.
It's a shameful truth, but comics publishing is about publishing as well as the art. So publishers are in the business to make money, and if they can make money, everybody's happy.
I know earlier this year we talked, and it was last year. Again, COVID has got my calendar completely screwed up. But it was last summer. It was about a year ago. You had a creator-owned campaign through Zoop. And how did that experience go?
Good. I mean, we funded. It's taken us much longer to produce the damn thing we wanted. We're late with it. So everybody that actually pledged, we apologize. You will get it. It is coming out. It's just taken a lot longer than we thought. One of the reasons being that it took Rick Leonardi a lot longer to finish the Blue Angel graphic novel for Dead Reckoning than anybody expected. But we're really happy with that, and I think people will be really happy with Resolution when they get it. We want to make it as best as possible, rather than like, oh man, we're late, we got to slam the thing out. You're going to get a pretty nice hardcover when we're all done with it.
Outstanding, man. That's great. Are there post-Zoop plans to release it through a publisher as well for the broader audience that didn't necessarily?
We've had tentative discussions, but we'll see. We just first things first. Let's get the damn thing
100%.
done, get it in front of everybody, and then take a deep breath and decide. Okay, well, this might be a good venue, or baby steps.
I'm hip. Absolutely. Well, before we get into the detailed transition of Hal Jordan to Kyle Rayner and how all that happened, as someone that started in and survived both the boom and bust of the 90s, what do you think of the last 20 years in terms of where we are in terms of the comic book market and publishing?
Well, we're still here, right? That's one. I'm here.
Was there that? But Ron, what really was there that level of fear of it going completely away?
I don't like the people that I talked to and hung out with, and had seen it all before, right? Like the Jim Starlins and Bernie Wrightsons and editors that up at Marvel and DC that had been there for years. Like they had been hearing the death knell of comics, every 2 years for the last 30 years.
Yes.
So this was just the latest iteration of that. But look, in the mid 90s, things were rough. The bottom dropped out, and a lot of stores closed.
Yeah.
And everybody scrambled to make sure that the doors stayed open on the ones we still had, which is certainly where Marvel versus DC came from. I mean, it wasn't like that project came out of, oh, this would be fun, let's do this. That project was inspired by the fact that Marvel and DC had a vested interest in keeping comic shops open, both for their own self-interest and also for the interest of the market as a whole, for comics as a whole. So, so we ended up doing a project that was designed to sell a bunch of copies and put a bunch of money into the pockets of owners so they keep the doors open.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah.
Which is exactly what it did. So, from the beginning of my career, and being friends with guys like Starlin and Wrightson and Terry Austin and Joe Staten, Fred Hembeck, I was aware that the business worked in waves and troughs. When I got in, when I took over Silver Surfer, it was selling 300,000 copies a month.
Wow! Yeah,
and sometimes twice a month.
Wow!
So now my Marvel royalty statements always said like 298 or 297.5 because 300,000 was the next bump up in percentage. So
I figured as much. Exactly.
Oddly, we just never got to 300,000.
So close. Oh, I'm really sorry, Ron. Man, that's a shame.
Coincidence, but we never got there.
Hilarious. Jesus. Who was your artist for Silver Surfer back then?
That was that Ron Lim person.
We love Ron Lim. Every name you just mentioned in terms of your older peers that had been through it before, it's like him.
Yeah, well, it was, so I was friends with those guys, and they showed me the ropes. Jim obviously brought me into the business. So
really,
when the royalty checks showed up for my first couple of gigs on Silver Surfer for 300,000 copies, those were good checks, right? Sure. And I was told this isn't going to last.
Sure,
this is not the way it always is. It's not the way it's always going to be. The wave will crest and then there'll be a trough. So I got it. I knew. And like some of the guys who were younger guys, like who were doing image books. I don't mean any of the founders, but some of the artists who were doing image books and got crazy royalties on their first few issues. Went out and blew it on sport cars and Lamborghinis and Porsches and stuff like that. And I remember visiting one of the early Wildstorm studios out in California, and like the garage under the building was just filled with sports cars, like really nice sports cars. And I thought, man, fellas, you're gonna have to sell these soon because it's not gonna last like this. So yeah, it's boom and bust. And you have to be aware of that, both personally and professionally.
Sure.
And you ride it out. Obviously I've been able to ride it out for 32 years and counting.
Attaboy.
And have been gainfully employed in this business, every day since I started. Which obviously I am extremely fortunate. And
yeah, man.
The sun has shone upon me in a lot of ways, and I'm very grateful. But you to a certain extent, you also make your own luck. If you learn the lessons that are put in front of you, so you can try to navigate the landscape that lies ahead.
Well, and this is me saying this, and I mean it, obviously, and it's one of the reasons why we continue to talk. You're a great writer, and you're reliable, and that's the thing. It's showing up every week, and also having the talent to back it up. I mean, that's something that a lot of creators can either be brilliant and not make deadlines, or make deadlines and not as good. So to be able to do both, obviously, is a testament to your ability and your understanding of the needs of the market.
Well, that's very kind, John. Hopefully, knock wood, it stays that way.
Hell yeah, man. Well, again, and this is why I appreciate you diversifying and doing these other genres, because I think there's opportunities there, and not everyone can do it. I always gave it up to Chuck Dixon for his ability to write in every genre, from humor to war to superhero to Western. He can do it all, and it's quite the craftsman.
I like pizza, but I don't want to eat it every meal.
100%. It's always my food. Absolutely, that's my food example. Christ, my father was a pizzeria owner here in Chicago. I know exactly what you mean. That's awesome, man. You're killing me.
Oh,
So listen, how did Starling get you in?
Jim and I were friends. I
How'd
met
you meet him?
Jim. I met Jim through Bernie. I interviewed Bernie when I was a high school student, and then interviewed him again in college, and we just got to be buddies. He, invited me. He
What a
invited
great
me
guy.
to his Halloween party.
Wow!
I went to his because we all lived in the same area too.
Sure.
I dropped off copies of the article from my college newspaper to his house, and he said, "Hey, come! We're having a Halloween party this weekend. Down in his studio behind the house.
Sure.
And you should come." So, geez, that's pressure. And I honestly almost didn't. I wondered sort of what direction my life would have taken if I had chickened out. Because I was like an 18-year-old kid.
Okay.
Amongst the comic
young adults
and art gods, and then I realized, well, everybody's in a costume. Nobody knows who the hell anybody is, so you're kind of safe. So I went and met Starlin and Fred Hembeck and a bunch of people that lived in the area, and just got to be friends with them. Bernie and I would go to go have beers and go to see lousy horror movies, and ended up playing racquetball with Jim and Bernie and Dan Green, and cool. It was my those guys were older than me, obviously, but it was that was a part of my social circle. And then I copy edited Jim's first prose novel for him.
Wow.
And he liked what I did well enough. Told him where the commas went and all that. And he said, "Did you ever think about writing comics? It's a good way to put food on the table." And I thought, well, obviously everybody thinks about writing comics, but that's not a thing you get to do.
Sure.
But Jim, when Jim Starlin says you should write comics, you get to write comics. So he showed me how to do it. Co-wrote my first few jobs with me, or more correctly, said, "Here, you write this," and then he went and fixed the stuff that I screwed up. And then when I think the first thing I wrote solo was a backup story in Silver Surfer Annual 3 that Jim Sherman was supposed to draw and write. Jim Sherman of Legion of Superheroes in the 70s fame. Sherman was supposed to write and draw it, and he disappeared in the Yucatan in Mexico, and they couldn't get a hold of him.
Wow.
And they were like, "Well, do you want to write the story?" Yeah. So, so thankfully, Jim Sherman disappearing into the jungle for a couple of months gave me my opportunity to do a solo story, and that was received well enough that I just started getting work, and in a year or two, I had more than enough comics work to quit the newspaper job that I was hanging on to through college and then shortly thereafter.
Sure.
And I mean, that's kind of the last real job that I've had, except for now I'm one of my gigs is I'm part of the narrative team on Diablo 4 for Blizzard. So making video games.
Yeah. That's wonderful, man. Forgive me, I see a text I'm getting from my sister, and that distracted me for a moment. So you're working on a Blizzard 4 video game. You also during the pandemic did a couple of online writing courses that you taught.
That's actually an ongoing thing for the Jacob Kruger studio out of New York City. So we do that. We do that a few different times, 4 or 5 times a year. So I teach a comic writing course. I do a workshop with people who want to keep going, and then I do one-on-one stuff with people who want to sign up for that. So in which I basically act as your editor and sounding board and father confessor for your project. So typically, as happens in comics, you're always juggling a few different things. So
100%, absolutely, man. No, and truly, again, much like you learning from Starlin, I think people could learn a lot from you. I think that's
Well,
great.
I mean, frankly, I teach people what Starlin taught me. I mean,
Of course.
the first thing that we talk about in class is the first thing that Jim taught me, which is every panel in a comic is a frozen moment in time. And your job is to pick out that frozen moment that best tells the story.
Interesting. Absolutely, man. That's great. When is the next opportunity for first level enrollment?
I think September we're going to do another. We're going to do it. I literally just finished one last week. We finished up a 4-week course. So I believe the next one is September, because August is always everybody's on vacation in August, and
plus all the San Diego announcements that'll happen this weekend and the fallout from that, the positive fallout from that.
Oh yeah,
I love when, and again, here's a podcast tip, everybody. Newbie, don't ask me to do something in August because I'm dealing with all the big announcements in San Diego. So it's
we're both old enough to remember when there were comic announcements in San Diego, not just TV and film stuff.
I believe there will actually. It is interesting that Marvel is now part of D23, the big Disney self-sustained convention, and certainly DC is doing their fan expos and everything. I forget what they call them, but their online stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everything evolves, and that's okay. I mean, my first San Diego was 92, maybe.
Okay, wow.
When it was the convention center itself was a third of the size that it is now, and there were a couple hotels and a couple restaurants, and the Gaslamp District was basically a couple of streets of liquor stores and porn shops and early hotels. Literally the other side of the tracks where the San Diego Convention Center was the other side of the tracks.
I'm hip.
And you did, the innocent, wide-eyed comic fans did not venture across the tracks.
Hilarious. That's awesome.
I've seen the gentrification, wind it 3 times around the clock so far.
To the point now, and I love this when I go to San Diego. I love the people that literally camp out on the lawn of the convention center because they don't have hotels, and obviously that's a great cheap alternative. And it's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll walk to Ralph's and I'll buy what I need at the grocery store.
It's certainly changed from what it was, and I don't begrudge anyone anything about it. But it's not a comic show anymore; it's an everything show.
Right. No, it's as important as Telluride or your favorite film festival.
Oh, completely.
And also, I mean, I love, as I know you've experienced as well, you see a bunch of anime fans suddenly walk by and stuff. Everybody is at Comic-Con for like 10 different reasons. I mean, God, stand-up is a big deal at Comic-Con. Things like that.
Everything goes there to cross-pollinate.
Yep. And I love that. Hell, man, I remember probably one of the last times you and I were both there. I think you were at the Omni or whatever, and I was I don't even remember what hotel I was at. But I mean, I always refer. I'm not going this weekend. I don't know if you're going.
No.
Okay. Well, as we both know, and especially as we get older and stuff, it's like really expensive summer camp. And I mean that in the best way. It's like, hey, it's all my out of town friends. This is great. We're all hanging out. Oh, look at that.
I got my badge, but I'm not going. So.
Oh, bummer. There you go.
I got the badge to be on the safe side, but then.
Oh yeah.
I
never know.
I guess San Diego County just announced, hey, COVID's really bad right now, so try to avoid mass gatherings.
And with that said, I'm going to Terrificon and Mohegan Sun next weekend. So yeah, I understand, man. I'm I got to get that second booster before I go. That's the plan this week.
That would not be a bad idea.
No, I just got my third in May, so I'm like. But I'm like, no, you better be safe. Probably better be safe. Let's get it. So,
better safe than sorry.
100%, man. No.
I have a few friends with it right now. So,
did you go? Have you gone to any in-person conventions since things kind of got lifted in the last 12 months?
Yeah, I've been. I just did a run of 4 weeks in a row.
Wow.
And I was, which was It's a little much. It was not. It was not what. Not what I was planning, but that's just how the schedule shook out. And I was just down in New Jersey a couple weekends ago for a show. I'll be in Virginia next month. So
Okay.
yeah, there's schedule is back to what it back to what it was. But I'm also a little tentative about the huge shows,
I'm hip.
San Diego and New York, and so I get to do Baltimore. That'll probably be the biggest one I do this year.
Okay. I'm doing Mohegan Sun, Connecticut, Terrificon, and then the weekend after that is C2E2 in Chicago. And a couple weeks ago, I did Fan Expo in Chicago. I felt like if I did San Diego, then Mohegan Sun, then C2E2, I'd be dead. I can't do every weekend like 20 years ago, man. No, it's getting tough. Old Gray Mary ain't what he used to be. Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
or gelding, I suppose. I'm not a mare. I'm not a gelding either. Everything's equipment's still there. Everything's fine. I don't know. I can't think of what the male horses are called other than stallions. Of course.
Stallions or sir. Sir.
Jesus. Do we have time to talk about well, first, DC. I'm glad you mentioned DC Marvel versus Marvel. Who's your editor for that?
Mike Carlin and Mark Grunwald.
I was going to ask. Okay, so you did have obviously editors at both companies and everything.
Yeah, sure. They really ran the whole thing. I mean, the first meeting for the whole thing was at Mark Grunwald's apartment, not in the office, because they wanted to keep it
quiet, so
on the down low that nobody would even realize. So yeah, Mike and Mark, who were best friends.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, Mike initially. I believe Mike was initially Mark's assistant at Marvel.
Makes sense. Now that you say that, yes, I did know that about Mike. Absolutely.
So they were best friends. They were the obvious guys to do it, and they ran a great project. Got all of the other editors kind of in line to not be nitpicky about stuff. Like, look, we're doing a big popcorn adventure. So let's not get crazy. And it was, from in that respect, it was entirely smooth and just a pleasure to work on the whole time.
That's cool. My favorite encounter, because it turned out to be not a battle, was of course Tim Drake and Jubilee getting together. And am I right? That was the right Robin that was with Jubilee, right?
Yep, that was all me. That was or that was me ripping off Shakespeare is what
those star-crossed lovers. Absolutely, man.
Star-crossed lovers, two houses, that whole thing.
But also the great thing of having that Jubilee still hung on to Tim's raincoat, and it just kind of became part of her look, and that was just such a great Easter egg for everyone to go, hey, I know it's a Marvel comic, but that's a DC coat. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was. Most of that stuff was just obvious. It was just like, you give the people what they want in that case.
Was there, and obviously Mark and Mike were friends. I love Mike, and I'm so bummed. I haven't tried lately, but the previous regime, and no disrespect to Dan DiDio, because this was really more coming from animation. It was like, hey, I really want to talk to Mike, and I got to know him because he's really good friends with Art Baltazar, and so subsequent San Diego dinners with all of us, sweetheart of a guy. And I'm like, I really want to talk to Mike. And they're like, no. And I'm like, why? Well, because we said so. And I'm like, hey, fuck you. I'm like, I'm nobody, but I deserve a better answer than that. And again, God bless Mike, man. Mike's like, I'm sorry, man. My hands are tied. I'm like, I totally get it. It's okay. I never blame the creatives when those kind of decisions are made. But were there battles where Mike and Mark were like, well, wait a minute, my guy should win. No, my guy should win, or my woman should win. Tell me.
No, it was entirely congenial. It was just like, all right, we got to have a certain number. We had to have 6 preliminary bouts, and they had to wind up 3 and 3. So we just
okay.
For all of the fans who want to be looking through Marvel Handbook and DC Who's Who and trying to figure out power, look, we just made it up. That's just how it works. Like that guy won because I said he won. That's the reality of it.
That's great, man.
So yeah, so that's the real revelation of this conversation, right? It's just we're just making shit up. We're just it happens because we said it happened.
Now, I got to be honest, man. This was my blind spot for reading. I kind of checked out early in the Clone Saga, and I read Kingdom Come. I read Marvels. I was aware of DC versus Marvel, but did Amalgam come from this event when they merged the characters?
The Amalgam, the initial Amalgam books, which were a dozen of them, came out between issues 3 and 4 of Marvel versus DC, which was frankly there. I mean, that was the real revelation of the meeting at Mark's apartment, which they said, okay, well, then they're going to battle, and in issue 3, they're going to battle, and people will vote, and I was like, well, how are we going to tabulate the votes and have the book out, have issue 4 out in a month? And they're like, well, it's going to be pushed back a month because we're going to do this thing in the middle of issues 3 and 4, which was the Amalgam stuff. And that was to me, that was the holy shit moment.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. We're going to slam these characters together. So they had the list. Mike and Mark had the list of which characters were, which titles were going to be part of that. Super Soldier and Amazon and,
Bruce Wayne and Shield, Spider-Boy.
Yeah. And so when they got to Strange Fate on the list, I was like, I'm doing that one.
Hip. Absolutely, man. You're damn right.
That's the one I'm doing because I have to.
I get it.
So that's how that shook out, and that's why the Strange Fate issue kind of actually has a more integral aspect to the story than any of the other ones.
Sure,
because I was obviously doing both.
And I read those after the fact. I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, they did what? Okay, great. Who was your artist on Strange Fate?
My artist on Strange Fate was Garcia Lopez.
Well, that doesn't suck. God, I hope he's okay. He canceled on Terrificon, and not to wish any ill will on Jose because he's an incredible man, and I appreciate his whole entire career, and he's been nothing but a gentleman every time I've met him. I really was looking forward to seeing him at Terrificon. So I worry about all these guys that are a little bit older, and especially with COVID and the monkey flu and all this crap out there. I mean, I'm sure you were doing the same thing, man. I really was, and especially when we lost our dear friend Marty Pascoe early on during the pandemic and stuff. And literally, I'm just kind of keeping tabs on everybody, like, hey, how's it going? And really, in the back of my mind, I'm like, are you all right? Everything okay? Can I do anything? What do you need?
From my understanding, I think Jose's doing pretty well, but
good.
Being in the midst of crowds like that, maybe not the best idea.
So agree. Yes.
So yeah, Jose was supposed to do the local Albany con here and ended up having to cancel. But from my understanding, things are on the upswing.
Well, that's great to hear. That's wonderful to hear.
So yeah, I mean, working with Jose on Strange Fate, obviously a huge career highlight. There's an original page from it hanging over there in my office.
Nice.
It's the only time I've ever had stage fright in my career to write. I sat on the couch in my office and just kind of stared off into space, going, "Oh shit, Jose's going to draw this. Oh my god, I gotta be worthy of Garcia Lopez." And somewhere along the line, and the editor started to call me. The editor was calling me because we had Kevin Nolan lined up to ink it.
Wow.
And he's, well, Kevin wants to get started. What's going on? He's, well, I'm working on it. I'm polishing it. I didn't actually tell him I was scared shitless to write for him. And then somewhere along the line, I realized that I could write the worst script in the history of comics, and it was still going to look amazing because Jose was drawing it, so it didn't really matter.
I'm with you, man. No, but thank God it was great. I'm really excited for the Black Adam movie and Dr. Fate having such a big role in that. And I've always loved when he showed up in Smallville and the like. And did you, obviously we got a couple months before Black Adam. Did you see the Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange movie?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't been to the movies in quite a while, just because there's been too much work to do, and I haven't been able to get out. But
No, I get it.
That's the
What do you think of Cumberbatch in general? I mean, obviously he made the Avenger movies and the first Strange
I
movie
think
and stuff.
I really enjoyed him, and I'm a huge Doctor Strange fan, so I was very keen to see it, but I just didn't get out to it. And I like the theater experience.
Sure.
I'd much rather have that than watching it on TV at home. But I just didn't get to it. I didn't get to that. I didn't get to a number of things that I wanted to see. So I got to catch up.
Well, we're traditionalists, Ron, and in fact, I was talking to Rob Burnett last night. And I know he's a traditionalist when it comes to movie theaters. That said, business is changing, and I mean, a lot of it. I those changes were starting even before the pandemic, but I really think the last 2 years kind of pushed things forward. People are getting comfortable being in their houses and watching movies, and screens are getting bigger in homes, so you can have a nice home theater and be Charles Foster Kane sitting there and watching a film or something like that, and enjoying it more in a private screening room versus, frankly, the lack of etiquette in theaters these days, where they literally have to do the 30-second commercial like, shut up, turn your phone off,
don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
I think when I do go see something in the theater, I wait till it's been out a few weeks. I go to a Sunday matinee when there's nobody there.
I go on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I hear you, man. Yes, yes.
I just don't buy. And my mutant ability is to attract the guy that can't get off his phone in the theater.
They're everywhere, man. When I saw Doctor Strange, literally there were 10 people in the theater, and this group of 5 come and sit right behind me, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, you can sit anywhere in the theater. Why are you doing this? And of course, who's that? Well, what does that mean? All right, is that? But wait a minute, I thought Patrick Stewart was Picard. What's he doing in this movie? Oh, idiots!
I could kill you. How would that be? Instead of eating my popcorn, I could kill you.
I'm in bed.
It is the bane of that, but you insulate yourself as much as you can.
I'm with you, man. No, absolutely, that's hilarious. I mean, honestly, man, I've kept you over an hour. Are we okay for time? Or
we can do a few more minutes.
Okay, buddy.
And then I got to go take a shower because I just came out of the gym.
You're funky. I understand, man. No, I understand. Good Lord, I whoever else is dwelling in the house, whether it's the dogs or other people and stuff, yeah, I sympathize that they got to hear you. They got to smell your funk while we're talking.
That's
So tell me about that transition from The Last Days of Hal Jordan into Kyle Rayner. I mean, like, when did you get involved? And I mean, obviously, I mean, there's so many iconic covers, both of Hal's fall and then also Kyle's rise and everything. But yeah, tell me about that period.
I got a call from DC. I believe it was a Thursday night, and I had just been in at Marvel all day. I had been in at Marvel talking / fighting with the Thor editor to try to bang that into shape, which ended up never actually happening. And I got a call like late in the evening, 8 o'clock-ish, something like that, from DC, and it was the Green Lantern editor, Kevin Dooley.
Sure.
Plus Denny, Archie, Mike Carlin, and I believe Paul Evans was in the room too.
Wow.
So when those people call you in the evening, something's up, and maybe you've screwed up really bad. But they offered me, they said, we want a new direction in Green Lantern. We'd like you to take over the book. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's cool. I love, Hal's cool, and it's all, he's Chuck Yeager with a power ring, and
yep.
I love that Gil Kane suit.
Oh yes.
Stuff. And then they said, so here's what's going to happen, and then drop the other shoe. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of a big deal. That's not just the next issue. But so they sort of told me what they wanted to do, sent me page-and-a-half outline of what they saw as the story. I actually ended up taking a week or so to decide whether I wanted to do the gig, because I knew it was, it wasn't just another gig. It was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And obviously, I ended up deciding to take the gig. And then it was, then it was pedal to the metal because it was late. We were late because they had decided that the original plan for issues 48, 49, and 50 was not going to cut it. Those issues were actually in production already, and they were just stopped and scrapped. So I wrote a new 48, 49, and 50, and wrote them all at the same time. Like wrote 5 pages of one, 5 pages of the next, 5 pages of the next to get all 3 artists who were assigned to those issues moving at the same time. And so it was a mad scramble to get all of that stuff done.
Amazing. And so did they have Kyle in mind? Did they present him to you, or did they say we need a new Green Lantern?
No, they had look, Nick Barucci just put a very nice note there.
Thanks, Nick. And Nick's been amazing the last couple of days.
I love Nick. The Hal's fate was sort of in that page and a half of notes. Here's what we want. Broad strokes. Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, like the last line of the notes was, and a new Green Lantern is created, and that was it. There was no here's who your lead character is going to be. They just let us make him up. So, to great extent, Kyle is who he is because that's what Darryl Banks and I wanted to do, and that's what DC approved.
Outstanding, man. No, Kyle's amazing, and that focus in the '90s of Kyle as GL and Connor as Green Arrow and stuff, I think was a fresh and necessary take to kind of freshen things up. And I'm glad that they both still have roles in the DC universe. Before I let you go, there's a couple questions, if you don't mind, because they popped in. And first of all, Louise says, late to the show, I met Mr. Marz years ago at a show. Loved his Silver Surfer run, especially Herald Ordeal. With the newest Silver Surfer series wrapped up, anything else coming down the line? Are you coming back at all to the Silver Surfer?
Well, Ron Lim and I just finished Surfer Rebirth, which was a 5-issue, let's get the band back together again sort of thing. And I believe the collected edition of that is out next month. It's out sometime in August. So to my knowledge, it sold well. It was well received, which is usually a good sign. So we'll see what happens for next year. Fingers
crossed, man. Absolutely. All right. Indy Atman, I believe, is saying this. And this is great, man. This is another old poll. And this is your cross-gen days. I'm not sure if this was already discussed. But can Mr. Marz talk about his inspirations, motivations for Sojourn? I absolutely loved it. And then also he asks, did you have a particular ending in mind? He noticed that you left Sojourn before it ended. Yeah, dude, real fast for people who don't know, Sojourn, when everyone is like, what a great idea. We've needed a Lord of the Rings sort of comic series for decades. I mean, this truly was one of those great ideas to come from CrossGen. And again, in your hands, it's like, well, you know what you're doing. One of my absolute favorite CrossGen books back in the day. Thanks, absolutely, man.
The thing I told the boss, Mark Alessi, was that, Lord of the Rings movies are going to come out, and they're going to be a big deal, and people are going to be into fantasy, so we should have a fantasy book. The truth of it was, I just wanted to write a fantasy book. Like, that was the real inspiration.
Yeah.
And that whole Lord of the Rings thing, that helped.
Sure.
But mostly I just wanted to do it. So he said, okay. And I, went into my office and over about 3 days, just made the whole thing up from whole cloth. And the only real input from Mark Alessi or anybody else at CrossGen was Mark said, put a dog in it. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, put a dog in it. People like dogs. Which ultimately turned out to be a pain in the ass because, like, if your heroes have to, run up a ladder to escape or jump off a cliff or something like that, and you're like, oh, I got this fucking dog. What are we going to do with this? So it did become a pain in the ass, but I love dogs, so
that's awesome.
And the ending of it was ultimately it was supposed to end in issue 50, or the initial storyline was going to end in issue 50, and the whole quest that that they were on to gather 5 pieces of a magic arrow that would slay the villain.
Yes.
Would have all turned out to not work. Like, that was not going to, like, here's a quest. If you do the quest, things work out the way it's supposed to. That was not going to happen. Like, we didn't want it to be, A to B to C. We wanted it to be, or I wanted it to be different than that. So at the end of that whole thing, when they gather all the arrows and it doesn't work, the troll captain, the guy with the horns, who was a supporting character, what would have happened is he would have actually killed the villain and destroyed his hold over the land, and then, like, the next 50 issues was going to be sort of the refounding of all of the kingdoms, and Arwen, the main character, sort of going off into the woods by herself, with the dog, and being not much of a part of the story until she comes back a ways later. So that was the plan. We never got there because of some political maneuverings in the cross-gen family.
Oh yeah.
And the starting dissolution of cross-gen. I was moved off of Sojourn, which I guess we can tell stories. I was moved off of Sojourn by the boss's wife, who was the general counsel of the company, and
wow,
we did not get along, shall we say?
I'm hip.
So she got me jacked off the book, and of course the sales guy and the financial guy was like, "What the hell are you doing? That's the only book that we've got that sells.
Wow,
worth a damn. So why are you breaking up the team?" But that's a much longer conversation of like the insanity that happened towards the end of CrossGen. So yeah, I was wasn't removed from the book, but the choice was, well, do you want to, you can step down, because initially my deal was I was being compensated to write 2 books at CrossGen. And then we added a third, and my pay didn't change. It was kind of like, all right, so I got a third more work, but you're not paying me. So for 2 years, I did it, and did it gladly. And then they said, well, you can step aside from one of these, but it's got to be Sojourn. So I was like, wait, I can cut my workload, and you're going to pay me the same anyway. So it got kind of messy, and I was a little sorry to see it go, but things were really starting to fall apart at that point. Anyway, we had a pretty good run for a few years, and then the cracks started to show.
I hear you, man. No, and I also remember you and Bart Sears, right, doing The Path.
Yeah.
Love that book.
One where we had a ball, and then things started to fall apart, and never quite got to the end that we wanted to.
Loved both of those books, man. Absolutely. And again, showing different sides of your writing abilities beyond the superhero fare. So again, I'm not surprised that you are welcoming these new genres that you're working in. Everybody Almost American is out now from Aftershock, and as a trade, absolutely worth your time. Fantastic, real spy story, and looking forward to more spy stories to come from Ron and company. And also, that's nice. I didn't know. Shinku is also fantastic. Says what book was Shinku, buddy?
Shinku is a creator-owned book I did with Lee Moder and colorist Mike Latia for Image. We did 5 issues and did a trade paperback, and then just really couldn't get the momentum to get much more. We've got a couple more issues in the can, and hopefully someday it'll come out. But it's a modern day samurai vampire hunter. So what I always told people is that if you like your vampires sparkly and romantic, it's not the book for you. If you like them to be monstrous and spattered with blood, maybe this one's in your alley.
I'm really quickly. I'm going to answer this question from the Wheeze when he says any thoughts of crowdfunding. Actually, Ron has done crowdfunding both with Zoop and Kickstarter, or was it Indiegogo? I forget which.
No,
for your
Kickstarter.
previous.
Yeah, Kickstarter.
It was Kickstarter. Yes, Wheeze.
It's part of the ecosystem.
Absolutely,
it's a vital part of the ecosystem. I think for projects big and small. I think it's certainly here to stay, and it allows you to tell your story in the way you want to tell it, and seek out the audience that's there for you. So I can also tell you that I've never run a Kickstarter. I will probably never run a Kickstarter myself, because it's a hell of a lot of work just being involved in projects that have gone.
I get it, buddy.
To Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I guess it must seem from the outside that money sort of falls out of the sky, and just riches are unleashed upon you. But man, you work for that money. The campaign, the production, the fulfillment, all of that stuff, that's money that you earn one way.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of work completely besides the creative work that goes into running a Kickstarter.
100%, man. Absolutely. From marketing to fulfillment, all these other things. And that's why I don't blame you for partnering up with, full service companies like Zoop to take care of that stuff. Because no, you're right. That's the thing that has made me gun shy about, attempting crowdfunding on my own, because I don't have the bandwidth or the really, I think, necessary expertise. I so give it up to people like Palmiotti and Amanda that do it themselves, do everything themselves, and they are like the Kickstarter gurus that I always tap to say, what else have you learned this year compared to doing it for the last 12 years?
It's a big chunk to take on.
Yeah.
But like anything else, you learn how to do it as you're doing it. So
Sure.
Each one is a little better than the last one, and then
Absolutely.
You sort of finally craft what works for you, and then you go over your goal, and then you actually got to produce the thing.
All right, Ron, I'm going to let you hit the showers now, because you were kind with your time, and I love where this conversation went, as always. Hey, man, let me throw the back signal up when the next project needs to be promoted, and I'm happy to have you back, and we talk more, because you're one of my guys, man. I'm always happy to talk to you, and I'm sorry we haven't seen each other in person, but thankfully we can talk via video and have new conversations.
We'll catch up soon, John, and as always, my pleasure. This is always a highlight for me, and I appreciate the time and the effort and the energy, and I appreciate everybody watching.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Fantastic questions. Tomorrow night I'm talking to a guy that is making, totally up my alley, a Muhammad Ali comic. How about that? Pretty cool stuff. So join us then. And then Wednesday, I'm talking to two guys. Ron, remember Joe Satriani, the fantastic guitar virtuoso?
Oh, absolutely. Surfing the Alien.
Surfing with the Alien, absolutely. He's got a new graphic novel. I'm going to record that on Wednesday. It'll be on later in the week. But yeah, I'm gonna be busy, even though I'm not at San Diego. We're keeping the lights on here at Word Balloon and giving you great comic book conversations. So thanks to Ron. Thanks to everybody else watching. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.